I love food and folklore. I was just sitting here, and Miss, you're going to have to tell me your name. Deborah, what's your last name? Wilczek. Okay, Deborah Wilczek is here, and she is an educator. She's been teaching for 41 years. I think she deserves a hand. Not only that, but I introduced Deborah because she was actually Whit Frazier's creative writing teacher at Rockwell High School. And so, Richard Montgomery, excuse me. And the book is dedicated to her. And I just think that's so wonderful. She's extremely excited and she's extremely proud. Some of her other former students are here tonight as well. And this is really what food and folklore is all about. It's about coming together, celebrating literature, and celebrating community. And so I think we have a wonderful example of that today in true Zora Neale Hurston fashion. So I've told you a little bit about Whit Frazier, and without any further delay, I'd like to bring him to the mic. Please join me in an Eatonville welcome for Whit Frazier.
First off, just want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. It's really exciting. And yeah, to celebrate, I guess, the Harlem Mosaics, which is based off of, as we've been saying, Neale fiasco. The book, as Pam was just telling you, is dedicated to my creative writing teacher, Deborah Wilczek. It's the dedication reads for Deborah Wilczek, a book full of butterflies. Where that comes from is, as a student, as a young man, I always wrote really dark stories about really dark sort of people doing negative things. And she always said one day, write a book full of butterflies. And as I researched this book and found out more about Harlem Renaissance luminaries, they're just really beautiful people, and I felt like that's what I'd done. I'd written a book full of these really beautiful characters, and so that's what I was trying to express with that. The novel started out basically as something that my interest was sparked by a documentary I saw about Zora Neale Hurston, Jump at the Sun, and it sort of touched briefly on the Eatonville fiasco, and I thought it was something that they had written together while they were traveling through the South, so I sort of wanted to write a black road novel.
This way, please. Thank you. That's fine. That's why I just step out a little bit. Yeah, thank you.
And in the course of researching the book, I just found so much more about the people, the characters, and actually the writing of this play, Eatonville, and how others affected it, how patronage affected it, and how basically all the really central elements of the Harlem Renaissance were part and parcel of the story of them writing what they wanted to be the first Black blues opera, the first really folk opera, and so that's where the idea comes from, and that's sort of how the book was generated. I guess I'll just read the opening few paragraphs of it. If anyone had any questions they wanted to, before I get started on the reading, please. These are the opening pages of the novel. Just begins chapter 1. A parachute balloon of a dandelion moon dispersed diaphanous evening clouds. Langston Hughes lounged passenger side, sassy Susie, leaning in and out the window, leaning in and out of sleep, listening to the music of Zora's voice as she told stories from Eatonville. But now the sun had gone down and the moon had come up, and some time had gone by since Zora had said anything. Langston was only distantly aware of this. A whir where Sass slipped through the shadows of sycamores. Say, Lang, I'm keeping you up? His eyes bleary, blinking open. No, I was listening and thinking. About what? About what you were talking about. And what was that about? Well, how's about a drink? Langston sat up, leaned the tin of gin reclining in his hand, easy and lazy, toward Zora. Zora shrugged it away. I like you, Langston, she decided after a while. What little anyone knows about you. What's that mean? Well, you've heard me go on and on about myself, my work, my husband. You never do that. Everything's guarded with you. I don't know about all that. He smiled at her, winked. You must have me confused with someone else. Langston dozed a while, and waking felt like waking and dozing and waking again were all a thread of the same dreaming. So he said, well, I'll tell you something, Zora. I'll tell you something about myself that's a little bit of a secret. They were headed north to the plantation where Jean Toomer wrote Cain to lie in the wheat fields beneath the full moonlight night and discuss the future of Black Blues opera. I shouldn't tell you, but I love you, Zora, so I'm going to tell you. What's that? Langston lolled in the seat, took a drink of gin. I'm being patronized. Zora glanced over at Langston, frowned. You're drunk, Langston. Just go back to sleep. That's true, I'm drunk. What's true, too, I'm being patronized. Rather, I have a patron. I call her godmother. She's going to finance my being a poet. What are you going on about? And I think she should patronize you, too. I'm going to make sure the two of you get to be good friends. That's nice, Zora, patronizing. Langston sat up straight. I know how I'm being, but really it's true. There's a white lady back in New York and she wants to act as my patron. She gives me money and I write poetry. I'm not supposed to talk about it with anyone, so it really is a secret, but it's true too. I'm not making it up. Oh, and what do you give this white lady in return for her money? August outside Atlanta, fresh from the bootlegger. Georgia roads reaching east, the southern spirit. The clouds haunting the lonely narrow roads. The moon lighting marigolds and the moon lighting fields plain full of peanuts. The southern soil spells the story of a culture. Some spells take root in your soul. They swell and grow until you ain't yourself no more. This is a story everyone buried in the ground already knows. It's not what you think, said Langston. It's not like that at all. Makes me want to crawl out of my skin just to ponder upon it. Geez, Zora, she must have been born sometime during the Jefferson administration. She's that ancient. She's from this old New York money, lives on Park Avenue and everything. She just happens to be fascinated with everything Negro, especially art. Another New York Negritarian. Anyway, you should meet her is all. I'll introduce you to her when we get back. Zora didn't say anything. How far out are we from Sempter? Zora smiled and sat up so the moonlight lit her like Ethiopia awakening. Sparta, here we are. So those opening passages sort of introduce what become some of the major problems and issues that Zora and Langston run into in the course of writing the play together. One of them being the patronage, having the wealthy white patron as what becomes more of a controlling force than either of them anticipates at the beginning, when they're just sort of playing with the idea of having someone finance their being a poet or being a writer or being an artist. Questions?
Got a mic here so we can take some questions.
Can you share what the riff was over Millbone?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm sorry I haven't gotten into that at all. The riff was basically over the ownership of the play. It's really complicated. They wrote the play together in Westfield, New Jersey, basically eventually, and Zora disappeared with a copy of it, supposedly right Act 2. Langston Hughes, meanwhile, stayed behind in New York, and then he went out to Cleveland when his money ran low, and his family was out there, and he was out there for the holidays anyway. And while he was out in Cleveland, a lady that worked with the theater company out there told her that they had just received a play, the most authentic black play ever. And it was from a rising new artist named Zora Hurston. It was called Mulebell. And Langston was like, well, that's our play. So he had the play sent over to him, and he read it, and it was the same play. I mean, it was the same play. It was the same papers and everything. Same copy stain on page 12. So the falling out was basically over the ownership of the play. The falling out was also really complicated. It was over, they had a stenographer named Louise Thurman who was typing the play, and it was also about how much percentage of the play she would get and how much credit she would get for it. They wanted to take it on Broadway. Langston Hughes was talking about making her stage manager. Zora didn't really want her included at all. And then there's sort of the further complication of Langston Hughes at this point was leaning heavily socialist, and the patron didn't like that at all. She didn't want him to be political at all. She didn't think that black writers should be political. They should just be sort of savage or something. So Zora sort of cunningly saw that Langston wasn't going to be in the picture with his patron for very much longer, and she wanted to sort of be part of that picture. I mean, she was wily, and she knew that to survive, she was going to have to continue to get money. One way or the other. So that was another point of contention between them. Yeah, the patronage, wow, yeah. The patronage, the ownership of the play, and then really it's just creative and sort of artistic and spiritual temperaments. I mean, they're soulmates on one level, and you read about Zora and you read about Langston, and they're just amazing how much their ideas and thoughts seem to be in tune with each other and how well they got along, but then on some deeper level, it's just like they never fit together. I mean, Zora's spirituality is really sort of fierce and unbounded and searching in ways that are unorthodox. And Langston's a very political thinker, or gets more and more to be a political thinker, and they are butting heads without even realizing it at a certain point, because they're both in very developmental stages of their lives at the time that they're writing the play.
I'll come to you, Miss. You sound and you.
Hi, I'm Sean. I'm very happy to hear you're jazzed up about the Harlem Renaissance, so that these works don't get lost and they're coming through your voices. So thank you for writing this book. I'm just going to add that the lady in Cleveland was Rowena Jella.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And she and her husband founded a theater called Caramoo, which, by the way, Black Nativity was there, was refurbished there by Mike Malone from D.C., which will become a feature film very soon.
Oh, really?
With Jennifer Hudson.
No kidding.
So Rowena and Langston had a very long relationship Jackson's high school days when he was in Cleveland. But also I wanted to ask you, as a writer, what was that Harlem Renaissance work that said, oh, I've got to dig deeper, that you were just so inspired by?
Oh, Cain by Jean Toomer. Yeah. Jean Toomer's Cain is amazing. I mean, it's arguably the book that launches the Harlem Renaissance. I mean, everybody had the utmost respect for it. Also, I mean, it's just filled with symbolism, beautiful poetry. Sort of its elliptical way of telling a story is I don't know. I mean, it's just sensual. It's beautiful, and it still manages to sound like the blues. And it's like, wow, how did he do it? There's nothing like that.
Could you talk about the motivation for the play? From my understanding, they were discouraged with the kind of plays that were being produced.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Up until that point, almost all theater about Black Americans had been produced by or through white America. So, I mean, the images of blacks were basically coonery or just clowns or foolishness, but also even with Langston and Zora didn't want to lose the spirit of comedy. I mean, they're both really fun, vibrant writers, but at the same time, there was just there was nothing really authentic that was out there at the time for Black theater. And the Black theater that did exist was, and this speaks actually to Rowena Jaleef. She, or actually, I guess it was Teresa Gilpin who had said to Langston that there was no really great Black comedy, which showed really Black theater from Black perspectives, from African American perspectives, and showed the humor and the warmth and the depth of the humor in a respectful manner.
So I haven't had the pleasure of reading your book. I did purchase it this evening. So without a spoiler, do we know if Zora pondered the implications of publishing the play without, discussing it with Langston? Did she ponder this? Did she stress over it? It's kind of curious.
She does. All I can say is chapter 7 and 8.
The play was based on a short story by her, right?
Yeah, it sure was.
It was. I think she felt ownership of it because it was based on a short story that she had written. So it was.
Yeah, she certainly felt ownership of it. And there's a scene in the book about halfway through where Zora's got the story and she's workshopping it with Elaine Locke and Georgia Douglas Johnson right here in Washington. They had the Georgia Douglas Johnson's Saturday Nighters right here in the city on S Street. And they're just tearing it down. I mean, she definitely felt a closeness to this story, and this story in particular, that that complicated it when it came to a question of who really had ownership of it, especially once Louise Thompson became part of the equation.
Could you speak maybe a little bit about the differences between them, between Zora and Langston, and their sort of their political sort of bent, and if they were, like, I always think if they were living here today, Langston would be a Democrat and Zora would be probably a libertarian.
Yeah, probably so.
So I mean, can you talk a little bit about the politics of their writings and how and the starkly different approach of how they sort of saw themselves contributing to Black culture and Black literature?
Sure. I'd say first off, they were both fiercely independent people, which is probably one of the reasons they got along so well to begin with. But Langston's view of, I guess, where literature and politics met was that literature was something that was of the people for the people. And so he wanted it to be broadly available to people, broadly accessible to people, and also broadly political, working towards a political end. And that political end was generally, like you said, a sort of democratic, trying to help the common man kind of approach, whereas Zora was independent, like fiercely independent, and expected others to be independent as well. And she really had little patience for people who weren't able to, and this is part of her spiritual philosophy. I mean, Zora was was very complicated spiritually. She had sort of a great understanding of a great many religions and a very complicated sort of personal philosophy or personal spirituality. And it probably involved that most people are asleep and one has to wake oneself up and sort of actualize oneself. And she didn't really have patience for people who couldn't, or patience for people who were threatened by those who could. So, in that sense, they just had very different approaches to the way that I think they thought politically about what literature should do. I think Langston was trying to raise people up, and Zora was trying to wake people up.
It's an interesting way of putting it.
You say they were fiercely independent, and yet they depended on this white woman. In your book, it creates certain conflicts within themselves and also between them as far as that kind of dependency.
That's true. I mean, that's one of the interesting contradictions about them. I mean, they're fiercely independent. But why? I mean, yeah, why do they sacrifice so much of that independence to this patron? I mean,
I mean, if I could add something else to that, I don't think that Miss Mason had a lot of. I mean, it was kind of a mutually beneficial relationship. I wouldn't say she controlled them, and when it became to the point where they felt like they were being controlled, both of them, they dropped her. I mean, you know, they moved on. I think it's important to understand that it wasn't like they were beholden to her in that sense. You know, I mean, obviously, the money that came was money they needed, and it wasn't a lot of money. I mean, you know, I don't know. She would pay them per writing. It was like $75 or something like that. I mean, it wasn't like she was like the sugar mama that kept them, you know.
Unless I misread it, there was a lot of angst involved.
I think receiving any money from
A lot of the dynamics of that situation.
yeah, Zora was receiving, I think, $200 a month. And she also, I mean, the contract is pretty harsh. I mean, she can't publish. If she does publish, she has to get Miss Mason's permission first. She's basically stifled as an artist. I mean, anything that she does write becomes under Mrs. Mason's property as soon as it's written, even before it's published.
But I mean, when I read the Langston's biography, he speaks rather fondly of her.
Oh, he does, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, she didn't seem to stifle his writing, and when it got to the point where he was feeling stifled, he broke
things off with her, yeah. And that's towards the end of my book, and it's also part of, I guess, why Zora, it's part of, I mean, many reasons why him and Zora have their falling out.
I wanted to ask you more specifically about their writing. I know that, you know, Langston was able to eke out a living really out of his writing for the most part.
Yeah.
Whereas Zora wasn't. She had to work a lot of odd jobs to be able to make it, even later in her career.
Yeah, absolutely.
So can you expound on that a little bit? Why even I know that her writing at the beginning was not well received by many people who were writing at that time, especially black writers. Can you also talk a little bit about that as well?
Yeah, one of the sort of funny dynamics of the story is that throughout it, Zora's 10 years older than Langston. She's had a lot more life experiences, and she's also had a lot more difficult life experiences. I mean, she grew up in the South. She grew up basically running away from home at a fairly early age and dealing with, I mean, a lot of the problems that black women's going to face being alone in the South in the early 1900s. Langston was much younger, and success came for him a lot earlier. So they're two very different places. I think that had a lot to do with the way that they thought about what was necessary for one to survive in the world, and basically, what sort of sacrifices one could make. Hughes was a lot quicker to sort of break out from Mason, and I think he probably thought that was able to do that because he didn't have sort of the same hardships, and he was 10 years younger, and he did. It's just a completely different. It's a different perspective. I mean, his youthfulness and his relative good luck, and the sort of Zora was 10 years older and had a difficult time of it, and was passing for the same age as passing. Is a funny word, but it was for the same age as Langston at the time.
He was also a lot more entrepreneurial. He used his writing and did the trips around the South, went to universities, spoke, and was able to collect money along the way. So
Absolutely.
he was able to turn his writing into a real business, so to speak, and really make it work. Whereas she just wanted to just write.
Yeah.
And wanted to just be left alone. She wasn't into that entrepreneurial part of an artist that has to go sell themselves to the world.
Do you think gender was part of it?
Sorry?
Do you think gender was a hindrance to her being able to have an entrepreneurial spirit at that time?
I mean, I think Whit can answer that probably also, but from my perception of her, of Zora, I didn't see her putting gender as an obstacle for her. In fact, when you read her life story, it's amazing that she was able to do all that she did at that period of time. And it really tells a lot about how we perceived black folks during that period of time, and how she was able to really manage to do pretty awesome things, even in that day and age. I didn't get the impression that for her, gender was a hindrance. I don't know.
I don't think she would have wanted to say it was. Realistically, I think it had to have been.
I just want to interject this, get back to this point about the independence of spirit, because I think it's important to clear this up. Zora actually was a hard-headed person, and she did not behave, and she published outside of her contract.
That's absolutely
There's a considerable
true.
body of short fiction that she got paid for, and this was not what she was supposed to be doing. And I also want to remind you that, and I find this one of the most fascinating things that Hughes did. You're right about the entrepreneurial aspect of it, but there's a con man aspect to this too. The book that he was selling was called The Negro Mother, and there's only one poem in the book about women, the Negro Mother. All the rest of them were about men, but he knew who was going to buy that book. The men were not going to buy any poetry books. So he sold that Negro Mother book all the way across the country, but that ran out. We're talking about the Depression here. He went to the Soviet Union. He got on a train. He went to Kazakhstan. He said, I got off the train when people started looking like me. He reported to the committee there and said, I'm a famous American poet and I'm a communist. Find me a place to live. After a while, they tried to throw him out. He said, I will make so much trouble for you if you try to throw me out of Kazakhstan. And he stayed there for a very long time, living off of the Soviet state because he did not want to go back to the United States because he had nothing to do there. There was no way for him to make a living. So I think both of these people were survivors.
If you could speak about what got him to the Soviet Union, I don't know if you know about the play.
I'm one of the foremost Hurston scholars on the planet.
Oh, great. Well, if you can share that. No. guess share that story.
I'm
Please
John
share that story
Woodson.
with everyone.
I have a book, To Make a New Race, Gurdjieff Tumor and the Harlem Renaissance. And I just sent my new book to press yesterday. My new book is actually about the trip to the Soviet Union. And again, it's more of the survivor stuff. Whit calls her Louise Thurman, but in my book she's called Louise Thompson. She has a lot of names. Louise Thompson Patterson, if you look her up on Google. She decided that there should be a movie about black people made in the Soviet Union. The thing that's fascinating is she got 23 black people to pay their way to the Soviet Union in 1931 when nobody had a nickel. And she told them, more con woman stuff, that the Soviet Union would pay them back. She had no idea what was going to happen. They got over there, and there are books on this. It's fascinating. The movie never came off. But the other thing is, not only did Hughes stay there, Dorothy West, a number of other people stayed there. And so this is a fascinating episode in terms of getting out from under. I mean, there's a lot of that. I think that's at the heart of this.
And Langston Hughes didn't want to have, after a while, when he realized that this movie was going to be kind of like a minstrel show almost, he decided to just drop out of it and decided to back out of it and went to travel throughout, like he went to Kazakhstan and all that. We have a great picture of him in this Kazakhstan outfits with a whole bunch of Kazis there. It was pretty interesting.
He traveled all over. He had quite an adventure, and there was another writer there. I can't think of his name right now that he hung around with. So he had a really great time.
Fantastic.
What role did Elaine Locke play in that relationship between Langston, Zora, Neale, and Miss Frazier?
For those of you who couldn't hear that, what role did Elaine Locke have in the relationship between Zora and Langston and their teacher?
Yeah, Elaine Locke really. Yeah, I really give him a tough time in my book. And I mean, he'd be the first to say that he behaved naughtily, and he would probably be proud of that in some sort of way. Locke was a patron, or was paid, got money from Mrs. Mason for basically his entire life, or at least a good part of it. He was definitely with her much longer than Hughes or Hurston were, and he liked being in that position. He liked having the money, and he liked being able sort of to work within the circles that she was influential in. He basically sowed seeds of dissent between Hughes and Hurston during the entire Neale fiasco. And he did so intentionally and sort of willfully, which is strange. I mean, he plays a sort of Iago character in my book, and there's just no way around it. That's the answer.
Did you have a crush on Langston?
Yeah, he sure did.
Okay, well, we didn't say that. That's an important reason for why.
Yeah, that's definitely an important reason for motivation for his actions.
Other questions? Well, again, thank you so much, Whit. Would you like to finish up with the reading?
Sure. The section I'm going to read now is from chapter 3, and they're sitting in basically a literary salon, and a bunch of the luminaries are sitting around discussing black literature and the approach, the best way, how to approach it. So, Jessie folded her hands across her stomach. No, a beat. Then, I heard you're writing a novel yourself, Langston. Now that should be something to see. I've just barely started on it yet. A lie, you could say, since he hadn't started on it at all. What's it about? Madariaga had been watching the conversation quietly for a while, and the thick Spanish accent startled Langston, along with the directness of the question he had no ready answer for. It's about... Now everyone was real quiet and looking at him. It's about me, Kansas, I guess. I don't know. What it's like for someone to come to learn they live in a world where white folks hate Negroes, and Negroes hate white folks, and how you learn to live in that kind of world. Well, arguably all Negro literature is about that. Counting caught Langston's eyes in a flash like a Chicago drive-by. A novel needs a story. Well, it's like I say, County, I've barely started on it. No reason to get defensive, Langston. You might want to try outlining your plot first before you begin work on it. County makes a good point. Elaine was looking at Langston inscrutably. Langston figured he knew there was no work on the novel yet. Ah, who's defensive? Listen, look, the book's the story of our people, like my poems are the story of our people, like Georgia was just getting at. It's like a series of blues songs that tell a story. I can give you a piece from it now. Langston took a drink of gin, continued. There's this bluesman in it, and he sings a lyric. I'll recite that, if I may. By all means, said Jessie, please do. Langston hopped off the love seat and took center stage in the circle of the sofas. This is from a part in the book where folks are singing, laughing, and playing guitar, and this one bluesman starts in to sing in that down south gator gravel way they have. Here goes. Down in Louisiana, they got peppers around the rock. Down in Louisiana, where the peppers around the rock, there's a spicy little pepper, well, there ought to be a lot. The blind man told the preacher, preacher, you cannot see. The blind man told the preacher, Lord knows you blind as me. The preacher told the blind man, your woman don't agree. I've traveled and I've traveled just to find a good old gal. I've traveled and I've traveled just to find a good old gal. Well, I come across plenty of women, but ain't never had a pal. The sweeter is the juice, the blacker is the berry. Said the sweeter is the juice, the blacker is the berry. The coolest of my blues can warm up January. Langston beamed and sat down to laughter and applause. All of it was improvised, he even impressed himself. So that's what I have to say about that. You are the diplomat, said the diplomat. I've heard a lot about you, Langston Hughes. It's good to finally meet you and hear you read. Langston is a genius, said Jessie. No one's denying that. But here's my challenge. The black artist has had her image twisted and distorted by the white world ever since we were brought here. In order to participate in entertainment, black artists have had to pander to these stereotypes. Burt Williams was a genius too, but he was also an Uncle Tom. So no one was laughing anymore. So, as black artists, we have a responsibility to our people, Jessie continued. We have to consider whether our art hurts our race or helps the race. The white, the European artists, their concerns are necessarily different. But a Negro artist is a preacher and a poet at the same time, because after all, our preachers are poets, so our poets must be preachers. White people will always reward images of our people that conform with the idea of us as simple, shiftless, unsophisticated, unintelligent people. So long as we just dance and sing and laugh and drive and drink moonshine and gin, white folks are happy and call us great artists. But I'd like to see real artists who have the courage to challenge those conventions. For a while, no one said anything. The room went still and silent and just a little bit cold. Langston lit a cigarette. He opened his mouth to respond to Jessie and just closed it again in a petulant puff of smoke. Every time he thought to start, he worried he'd just sound naive. You can imagine the boys pulling some heavy history down from the shelf with a deep frown. Actually, Langston. Well, someone needs to speak for the low-down folks, Wally said after a while. We're not all talented Negroes. Well, we are, said Bruce, throwing his feet up on the table and gesticulating in an all-embracing manner. Bruce grinned a sleepy grin and sank into his oversized gray suit. He had no socks on and he was wearing dress shoes, so his bare ankles rested against the edge of the table. And Bruce is right about that much, said Jessie. You are not from a poor, uneducated, deep South family, Langston. You are a relative of John Mercer Langston and Charles Henry Langston. Even though you weren't well-to-do growing up, in your last book of poems you were simply aping people you know nothing about. Why don't you write something from the heart, something you know? After all, you yourself wrote in The Nation that no great artist is afraid to be yourself. Why not let real blues and jazz speak for the low-down folks? Elaine suggested helpfully with a delicious dollop of irony. Langston frowned. And in the meantime, we get these sensationalist novels, like Nigger Heaven of all things. Sure, they sell, but they do more harm than good. They're cheap, sentimental trash, perpetuating stereotypes, masquerading as art. And when Van Vechten deigns to show Negroes as acting civil, well, my God, he writes it like it's a revelation. Like some Negroes aren't savages, speak French, discuss ideas. He makes it seem unnatural, and that just makes us the exception that proves the rule. I can't stand him or that novel of his. Well, it wasn't so bad as all that. Not Carlo's best book, admittedly, but a noble effort, said Walter White. Jessie snorted. A noble effort indeed. It just goes to show everyone wants to be blacker than they really are. The white writers want to write about shines, and the black writers want to write about shines too. How can you glorify a social catastrophe and believe you hold to the standards of high art? High art, pie chart, said Bruce. Ain't you just mad at that book because you're Mary loving it? As for high art, I ain't never heard of the thing, and the fellow who coined such a concept must have been a high tart shirt. The Mary Love character is a grossly distorted caricature at best. Jessie Fawcett blushed cherry brown red. And Van Vechten certainly has no understanding of the inner lives of black women, which is precisely why the Negro artist has a responsibility to write honestly about herself. Van Vechten, as an overprivileged white man, isn't up to that task. Why don't you understand that you can't possibly separate culture from politics? I don't see why a poet should have to identify himself as a Negro anyway, said County. You all know how I feel already, and I know how some of you feel about that. County gave Langston a meaning look, and then, but I am proud to say that I'm a poet first and foremost. I just happen to be a Negro. How is that different than a Negro who just happens to be a poet? Asked Charles. Because I don't define myself by my race, I define myself by my vocation. And what defines your vocation? I always thought a poet wrote from experience. A poet writes for universal truths. And how does he have to arrive at them? Through particulars. I mean, like being a Negro. That's what I meant. Which is why I say you're a Negro who happens to be a poet. Like it or not, County, being a Negro is defined more in a small part of your experience. Clever sophistry, Charles, but it is sophistry. Poetry is about revealing universals through particulars, yes. And of course my experiences as a Negro play a large part in my poetry. But I don't limit myself to being a Negro poet. That I won't do. Segregate myself in some subsection of literature. I want to write the work that's timeless and particular at the same time, like all great poets do. Go on back to Europe where you belong, said Langston. Thank you.
You may leave and go to Harlem Fair, but my slow drag will bring you back. Well, you may go, but this will bring you back. I've been in the country, but I moved to town. I'm a Tolo shaker from my head on down. Well, you may go, but this will bring you back. Some folks call me a Tolo shaker. It's a doggone lie. I'm a backbone breaker. Well, you may go, but this will bring you back. Oh, you like my peaches, but you don't like me. Don't you like my peaches? Don't you shake my tree? Oh, well, you may go, but this will bring you back. A hoodoo, a hoodoo, a hoodoo whacking. My heels all popping and my toenails cracking. Well, you may go, but this will bring you back.
You said you learned in a crowd. How do you learn most of your songs?
I learn them. I just get in the crowd with the people, and if they sing it, and I listen as best I can, then I start to join in with a phrase or two, and then finally I get so I can sing a verse, and then I keep on till I learn all the songs and all the verses, and then I sing them back to the people until they tell me that I can sing them just like them. And then I take part and I try it out on different people who already know the song until they quite satisfied that I know it, and then I carried my memory.